Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to this November 5, 2014 edition of Nightcast. A Palestinian driver has rammed a car into several pedestrians in Jerusalem, killing one person, hours after clashes erupted in the city's holiest site. About a dozen people were injured, and the driver was shot dead by police. Yolande Nell reports in this opening story from Jerusalem.
Hamas have claimed responsibility for this attack. We had already been told that this man, the Palestinian driver, was a member of Hamas, and certainly Hamas had spoken supportively a couple of weeks ago after there was a similar attack by a Palestinian driver which killed two people in an area of East Jerusalem very close by to where these latest attacks took place. Now you can also see security camera footage now. It's been released. You can see that there is a speeding white van on this section of road that divides West and East Jerusalem. It hits, first of all, several people that are crossing the road before mounting the pavement of one of the tram stops that runs along the same route. Then there is some grainy footage that shows this man apparently with a metal rod. That's what the Israeli police say he had when he got out of his car, started hitting people, and they say it was at this point that he was shot and killed. Now, the Israeli police were very clear that this was a terrorist attack. They say that one man, a 40-year-old man, has been killed, and as you say, several other people injured.
And friends, two things of interest to note relative to Jordan's reaction to today's news. One, excuse me, friends. One, following this incident, Jordan recalled its ambassador to Israel over what it called the unprecedented Israeli escalation at holy and sensitive sites in Jerusalem. 2 weeks ago, there was, as you heard in this story, there was a similar Palestinian driver attack in Jerusalem. A woman and a baby were killed in that attack. And maybe I should say three things that Jordan is concerned about, because Jordan is also upset that access has been recently restricted to the Al-Haram Al-Sharif compound where the Al-Aqsa Mosque is located, the third holiest site in Islam. And so then the third thing that Jordan shows it is upset about is this. Jordan also cited what equates to be a long-time rejection of recognition of Israel as a state with a right to secure borders, as Jordan cited continued building of settlements by Israel, and Jordan plans to lodge a formal complaint to the UN Security Council in protest, reports say. News from excuse me. Friends, news from the 1st of last month, actually October 2nd, Sweden announced that it would be recognizing a Palestinian state. So, Naphtali, close blood brother of Dan, both born to Jacob's to the handmaid of Jacob's wife, Rachel. Both of these born to Jacob, whose name was changed by God to Israel, with Naphtali being a son, again, to Israel by Rachel's handmaid Bilhah. So was Dan. Dan was born to Israel by Rachel's handmaid Bilhah. He was the firstborn. Naphtali was the secondborn. Naphtali is modern day Naphtali is Sweden. And it's already, Sweden is already on record. Let me bring this forward where you can see this. If you look down fourth from the bottom, you'll see Naphtali, Sweden. Its modern-day description is described in prophecy in Genesis 49:21. Let me bring up another slide I have relative to this. It'll show you, I've got this slide I put together showing who was born to whom, and if you go down, well, it's the sixth one from the bottom on this slide, you'll see that Naphtali, where it mentions Sweden in the bold type there, you'll see that's Naphtali, who was the second born of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid. And again, the reference, excuse me, I'm fighting a little bit of a cold, but the reference in prophecy to modern day Naphtali is found in Genesis 49, verse 21. And the prophecy there is that Sweden is attractively described, and that's what Sweden is today. Now, so Sweden has gone on record in favor of Ishmael against Abraham's son Isaac. The United States will head that way too eventually, along with the UK, as prophetic scripture excuse me, tells us in Isaiah 9, verse 21, where it says, Manasseh, Ephraim, and Ephraim-Manasseh, and they together shall be against Judah. Again, they together shall be against Judah. The two brothers, Ephraim and Manasseh, the two brothers, sons of Jacob, Israel, against their brother, also of Jacob, Israel, Judah. For all this his anger is not turned away. They're speaking of God, but his hand is stretched out still. And I'm sorry about my throat. I am fighting a cold. I wasn't going to air tonight for a couple reasons. One, the cold I'm fighting, and two, software development that is due. I have to finish my part of software development by tomorrow. That means I may be up into the wee hours tonight and then up again early in the morning to get it in by deadline time, or else I'm going to suffer a fine, a penalty, financial penalty, because of my part due by a certain time. And it's actually good for me. It'll force me on this project we've been working on for 2 years. It'll force me to get that in and get that together, and it's coding of software that will help us in running this program, and we'll be able to do a little more that you'll begin to notice once I have that software, and it'll help me in putting the program together and in running the program. So trying my best to finish my part. Plus, we've had to wrestle with some things like we have a broken water main on our side of the meter. We got an $800 water bill, and I said, whoa, shut that main off till we can find where the leak is. I found the leak. I did some of the digging myself to find it, and I've got to do some more digging to find. We see where the water's gushing out from, and I got to dig till where we find the pipe. It's a kind of a crazy, unusual gush of water coming out. So I got to find what's. I got to get right to the pipe, find out what's causing that, and then get some professional plumbing people in to help resolve it. But in the meantime, we got the water shut off, and I'm having to carry buckets of water to feed the animals that are here: horse, donkey, goats. But that's okay. When you have trials, God says rejoice, and oftentimes it's blessings come out of trials if we keep the right attitude. And I'm saying, okay, God, I'm trying to be joyful about this, and I'm looking for, what are the blessings going to be that come out of these particular trials. And one is we'll finally have that software I wanted to have developed if I meet the deadline tomorrow. Push myself, and I'll appreciate your prayers that God give me the energy to stay up and get up again early in the morning and get the developments plan and scheme that the coders need to work from all finished, and that God will help me overcome and heal from this this cold that's getting me. I tell you, we've got some stories related to the Ebola virus tonight. I don't think I have anything like that, but I hope my faith's strong enough, God, if I do, you'll heal me of it. But I sure can empathize a little better having something to fight like this when I see these Ebola stories. And I hope, friends, I hope these stories I show you tonight related to Ebola, I hope that you will be able to put some teeth in your prayers, if not tonight, tomorrow night, as we approach the end of the week and a Sabbath coming up, that you'll really be able to pray for these people that are suffering these viruses. A couple stories related to that coming up, but first, let's turn to the stories related to the big mid-term election results. This is news. I try to stay out of politics, but we do report the news. And the news headlines for this next story from today's news says it was a very good night, referring to last night at the end of election time, for Republicans. Let's go to the BBC's election reporter for this story. I want to give you his name. This is Rajesh Mirchandani, who explains the results from last night's election outcome.
Here in our results studio, we've been keeping across all the races, and what's clear is that it was a very good night for the Republicans. Not only did they extend their majority in the House of Representatives, but they won control of the Senate. That battle started very strongly in the state of Kentucky when Mitch McConnell, who's the most senior Republican in the Senate, was easily re-elected. In fact, Republicans also took key seats from Democrats in several states, including in Arkansas, in Colorado, in Iowa, and in North Carolina. And that was actually the seat that clinched it for them and helped them deprive the Democrats of their Senate majority. But the exact breakdown of the Senate, well, that won't be known for several weeks. And that's because of what happened here in the state of Louisiana. They have special rules here. Neither of these candidates won more than 50% of the vote, and that means that they will go to a runoff election, but that won't take place until December the 6th. Now, midterm elections are often a referendum on the president's popularity, and with Mr. Obama's ratings very low, many Democrats have suffered from being too close to him politically. Now, he may suffer too. The Republicans are in control of both houses of Congress, which means they will set the agenda in Washington for the next 2 years.
And friends, following up on this report, a little later report, which would make it, in essence, an update, our same reporter, Rajesh Mirchandani, has more.
This is where we have been up till now. Democrats in the blue in control of the Senate. But Republicans are looking to gain at least 6 seats in the Senate to take over as the majority party there. They already control the lower chamber of Congress. That's the House of Representatives here. And that balance of power is not expected to change tonight. If anything, it could go even more to the red. So victory could give Republicans control of both chambers. So, what would a Republican-controlled Congress mean for American politics and for this man, Barack Obama? Well, Republicans would be able to pass legislation that Democrats don't like. And the Democrats, Mr. Obama, well, he would probably use his presidential veto to stop those bills becoming law. But careful, if he does that too much, he could be accused of becoming imperial, authoritarian. There are also another limits to the presidential veto, and it's this stuff. Republicans would be able to write more of their policies into budget legislation, and that's much more controversial for the president to veto because it would mean the government wouldn't have enough money to pay its bills or people, and the government might shut down. But if they do take the Senate, it won't be all plain sailing for the Republicans either. They don't want to appear to be pushing an extreme agenda. If they're at loggerheads with the Democrats, few meaningful laws will be passed. And that could make public opinion of Washington politicians even lower than it is already. So maybe just maybe, a Republican Congress and a Democratic president might find a way to work together to get things done over the next 2 years. Americans would love that, but a cynic might say, don't hold your breath.
All right, friends, I wanted you to see that because as Rajesh Mirchandani, as he explained what a Republican-controlled Senate could mean for President Barack Obama and the Republicans themselves, was an informative talk that he just gave, and good for us to be aware of. I want to go now to a video that shows Republican Senator Mitch McConnell, who has retained his Kentucky seat in the U.S. midterm elections. Senator McConnell, who is his party's leader in the Senate, said the election was not about him. You'll hear him say that in this video. Not about him or his opponent, but the fact that, quote, people no longer trust the government. But he hinted at a willingness to work with the president in his victory speech, saying, quote, just because we have a two-party system doesn't mean we have to be in perpetual conflict, he said. But friends, after he talks, I might show one more video, and we're going to bring up a scripture or two that relates to this whole thing of government and consider some of God's announcement, opinions, instruction to us. But let's go to this one featuring Senator McConnell.
When you get right down to it, that's what this campaign was really all about. It wasn't about me or my opponent. It was about a government that people no longer trust to carry out its most basic duties, to keep them safe, to protect the border, to provide dignified and quality care for our veterans. A government that can't be trusted to do the basic things because it's too busy focusing on things it shouldn't be focused on at all. A government that's too busy imposing its view of the world on people who don't share that view. Too many in Washington have forgotten that their job is to serve. So tomorrow, the papers will say, I won this race. But the truth is, tonight we begin another one that's far more important than mine. And that's the race to turn this country around. To restore hope and confidence and optimism to this Commonwealth and across this nation of ours. Some things don't change after tonight. I don't expect the president to wake up tomorrow and view the world any differently than he did when he woke up this morning. He knows I won't either. But look, we do have an obligation to work together on issues where we can agree. I think we have a duty to do that. Just because we have a two-party system doesn't mean we have to be in perpetual conflict. I think I've shown that to be true at critical times in the past. I hope the president gives me the chance to show it again.
Well, friends, I've got one more video we're going to turn to related to this, but I'm just going to comment that there's a certain optimistic outlook following this midterm election from yesterday. And, you know, it's in a way it's wonderful for us. After you suffer for a long time and you see problem with your government, it's a little bit refreshing to see something that seems like it's a little bit of a turnaround to that, and like, wow, could be some changes now. Yet still there's one thing that, as we were taught over and over again in Ambassador College, that God is allowing man to do in the 6,000 years that man has been given, he's actually taken it to himself, the right to decide the laws that he'll live by, and he's decided to govern himself instead of looking, to God, completely and fully to God. Now, some people do the best they can. They try to live and be good people, and there is, even on the two trees that God mentioned were in the Garden of Eden, the one the tree of life, the other the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. There is good on that tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is also known as the tree of death. But there's good on that tree of death. And some people are, quote unquote, good people. And I mean, they're the kind of good people that are good to have as neighbors. I mean, they'll do anything for you. I got a neighbor like that I'm extremely thankful for. I have a problem or I need some help on my property. He's over in a moment to give me help. Now, I try to do the same thing with him. He needs some help over on his property. Boom. I'm over there to give him a hand. And, we both do it kind of gratisly. You scratch my back, I scratch your back. It's just a good neighbor thing. It works out real good. Works out great for me, works out good for him, too, to have, you're not supposed to be tooting your own horn, Stephen, but for him to have me as a neighbor, good for him. For me to have him as a neighbor, very, very good for me. But now, the thing we were taught over and over in Ambassador College in Pasadena, California, was that in those 6,000 years that God has allotted to man to govern himself, to go his own way, to decide for himself right and wrong, to make his own laws like the Republicans and the Democrats do in the United States, the lesson in history will come down to, without God, man just cannot govern himself. Without Jesus Christ here actively as the King of Kings, as the head of of the kingdom of God here on this earth, one government over the whole earth. Now, the governments of this world will fight Jesus Christ at his return, as the prophecies tell us. They'll think he's an alien, coming from another planet, trying to take over. And they'll fight him. They don't want him to have control. They won't recognize who he is really. And they'll lose that battle in the Battle of Armageddon. There will be blood blood piled up high and all over the place. And that's not far away from us, friends. The way things are going, we're soon coming to that. We're watching for something to happen. I'll mention it later in the program we're watching for November 29, when Pope Francis will be speaking before the European Parliament in Strasbourg. He's been invited. He accepted the invitation to speak before the European Parliament. Now, that's could be very interesting to see what he's going to be saying there. But I've got one more story. Let's go to one more where Rajesh Mirchandani will appear in this next video. Let me get it up here. And here's what we'll be hearing in this one. The Republican Party has won control of the Senate, so this is how our videos progress. This is our last one on this story now. The Republican Party has won control of the Senate in the U.S. midterm elections. Republicans won Arkansas, Colorado, Iowa, Montana, North Carolina, South Dakota, and West Virginia. And the party set to strengthen its majority in the lower house of representatives. The result means Republicans have the power. This, according to the BBC's lead-in on this, friends, it says the Republicans have the power to shut down Mr. Obama's policies in the last 2 years of his term. Here again is Rajini. Oh, wait a minute. This is a different reporter. Rajini Vadanathan reports from Washington.
It's election night in America. Voters are choosing the 114th Congress.
You're watching live coverage of election night.
The highest stakes were in the battle for America's upper house of Congress, the U.S. Senate. As the results came in, it was clear this wasn't a good night for Barack Obama's Democratic Party, as they lost key seats across the country.
West Virginia is one of the first tonight, and West Virginia has done it right.
The state elected its first Republican senator in more than half a century.
It's time to turn this country around.
In a hotly contested race in Kentucky, Republican Mitch McConnell held on to his seat. As the top Republican in the Senate, he'll remain a thorn in President Obama's side.
Tonight, Kentuckians said we can do better as a nation. Tonight, they said we can have real change in Washington, real change.
I'm not Barack Obama. I disagree with him.
With a price tag of almost $4 billion, this was the most expensive midterm election ever. It was also seen as a verdict on President Obama. With his approval ratings at a record low, many of his own party distanced themselves from him. But even that didn't help Democrats on the night.
12 years ago, the people of Arkansas gave me the greatest privilege of my life to represent them in the United States Senate. Those years were filled with some hardships and some difficult decisions. 2 wars, the most severe economic downturn in my lifetime, and an exploding national debt.
As well as deciding which politicians will be turning up to work here, these elections will determine what policies are passed in the next 2 years. It's already been tough for President Obama to get Congress to back some of his key reforms, and it looks like his final years in office and the chance for him to shape his legacy will be even tougher. Rajini Vaidyanathan, BBC News at Capitol Hill in Washington.
Thank you. And friends, if the last video that we just played, if you didn't see it in the archive because it got knocked out in the archive in YouTube, if it got knocked out there because the BBC put in a little bit of music under part of that story, and if it's a piece of music that the YouTube watches for content ID copyright and I didn't get a license in advance for that music, they'll knock out that portion of our video. And if that happened and my speaking here now, you say, well, what video are you talking about? We didn't see it. You know, the one with the reporter that you see behind me right there, Regina Vaidyanathan. If you didn't see that story, it meant that little bit of music caused it to get knocked out in the archive because of the copyright on the music and the content ID problems and licensing that hard to get on a moment's notice. So you can go to our archive on cogtv.org, and at the top on that, our homepage on cogtv.org, if you punch the video archive there, you'll see 2 sets of archives, one for a channel I do on the weekend, it's on the left side, and one for the channel we do every night, Sunday through Thursday night, for Nightcast. And just pick tonight's date, November 5. You'll be able to see the video that might get knocked out because of that little tiny piece of music. Now maybe it'll fly through, and you'll have seen it on YouTube's archive, where a lot of people watch this when they don't watch us live. Now, if you watched us live, you know, it goes. You'll have seen that video if you watch us during the live time. And that's what I hope most people will start doing, is watch us during our live stream time. Because I like that. Those of you who are in our church who watch it at that time, and if you don't consider yourself an enemy of mine, you can pray for me if you see me having any kind of a problem, or if we're having any kind of equipment problems, or if I'm coughing up a storm because of a cold or something. You say, God help Steve, at least through the broadcast here. And I'll appreciate that, and he very likely will do that. I feel like he's helping me at the moment. And so anyway, just so you know, if that piece of video wasn't there, you can catch it in our archive on our website, where You know, that little piece of music won't get us knocked out on our own website. Well, I leave stuff up there for about a month on our own website. I leave it longer on YouTube because they just let you pile them up, and I just leave them there almost indefinitely. Okay, let's go on, though. I usually try to run this program for a half hour, get the news in. Tonight, with those midterm elections, and I felt like that was some pretty important video to be hearing and knowing about. I got 2 or 3 more stories. Hope you'll stay with us for those. We'll be going just a little bit over the 30-minute time. Of course, some of you asked me to make this an hour program, and I, once in a while, especially after on Sunday night, after we've been off since Thursday night, oftentimes I do make that longer because there's just more news to cover, and on some nights there's just a lot of stuff that is important. So we'll go a little longer those nights, and I haven't had anybody complain about that so far, and some of you are encouraging me to go longer. So, but anyway, I try to get it in so that those of you who are busy, we try to do you a service, grab the news that's important, and boom, put it out here for you so that you don't have to spend the whole day like I often do and searching through these things. Now, and then putting it all together for you in one simple boom, 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 here it all is. All right, let's cover these last couple of stories that the United States is not the only big country that shares a lot of its blessings with other countries. As God said, the world would be blessed because of the sons of Joseph. Joseph had 2 sons who carry his name, by the way. They, as half-tribes, they step into the shoes of Joseph when you count the tribes of Israel. They count as 2 half-tribes. Ephraim, the UK, and Manasseh, the United States, the 2 sons of Joseph. And Ephraim, the UK, is very, very big in helping other countries of the world, as the United States has been for a long, long time. In this next story, you'll see how the first of 6 British centers for treating people suffering from Ebola is opening is opening in Sierra Leone's built by the British Army. The facility will be jointly run with the charity Save the Children. It's located in Carytown, 40 kilometers, 26 miles outside the capital, Freetown. Cleve Myrie looked around the new center.
Welcome to Sierra Leone and this Ebola treatment center paid for by British taxpayers and built by British Army engineers. It's hard to believe that just 8 weeks ago this 7-acre site was scrubland. Now it's a fully functioning treatment center. Let me just show you around the place a little bit. Potential Ebola victims will be taken through here to the triage area, which is just on the left. This is where it will be established by health workers whether or not they are suffering potentially the effects of the disease. And as you can see, there is a perspex screen there to divide the health workers from potential victims. It is vital to separate out those people who are suspected of having the virus and those who actually have it. Remember, the symptoms of Ebola include diarrhea, they include nausea, high fever, and those kinds of problems, which are very similar to malaria. So you can have malaria and be a suspected Ebola victim, so they have to be separated from those who actually do have the virus. And at the beginning of this crisis, both people were being mixed together, and that of course caused huge problems. So that's a suspected Ebola ward. But further down here, just on the right hand side, are where the confirmed cases are kept, and for them it's important that they are rehydrated and given proper nutrition. If those 2 things can be kept in balance, then their chances of recovery are improved dramatically. Well, with me now is the country director for Save the Children, Rob McGillivray, and he is part of the team that is helping to run and manage the treatment centre here. Thanks for joining us on BBC News. First of all, how much of a difference is this place going to make, do you think?
It will make a significant difference. I mean, this is a 100-bedded unit. It's the first of its kind in Sierra Leone. It has been done using an amazing amount of cooperation between the British government, the Ministry of Defence, the Ministry of Health in Sierra Leone, Public Health England, and a number of other partners without whom this facility would not be able to open. It will treat 100 people. We hope We hope that people will recover, and if people don't recover and die or succumb to the disease, then there will be significant respect paid to their body and to the families who will have to look after them.
Okay, Rob McGillivray from Save the Children, many thanks for that. With the right care and treatment, you can survive Ebola. Survival rates are as high as 60 or 70%. And if you are one of the lucky ones, your final shower will be in there. They call it the happy shower. You should be. You've survived the deadly disease. But if you're one of those who has succumbed to the virus, then this is where you end up.
Okay, friends, I apologize for the little bit of a delay right there. I ran out and gargled with some things. I got some extra vitamin C. I got some organic oranges. I got some things to just help me. Some of those symptoms he mentioned in this report are some of the symptoms I've been having with this thing. You've been hearing this cough. I've been having some of those other symptoms too, but I don't think I have the Ebola virus, and because nobody around here, anywhere near around here, has got it. Now, some of you have written me some reports, sent videos to me that say, "Hey, that's a big hoax over there. That really people aren't getting that from one another. They're getting it from having taken the Ebola shots, like you take flu shots." And well, there's certainly some truth and potential of that. And a real life example is my own dad. When he was alive, at 82 years old, he went and got a flu shot. And at 82, his immune system not as strong as a 20-year-old man's immune system, or even a 30 or 40 or 50-year-old man's immune system. At 80, you got to be real careful. What they're doing when they give you a flu shot is they're giving you a little bit of the flu, under the theory that by giving you a little tiny bit of the virus, your body will develop the antibiotics to it that fight off. If you get around a lot of flu, then you got the antibodies already built up, the natural antibodies that the body produces, already built up to fight off a big bash of flu. Unfortunately, with some older people and certain others, that theory doesn't always hold or work well, because within just immediately after that, the next day or two after that, my dad came down with a bad case of the flu, and then with him having it in the same house with me, I began to come down with it, even though I didn't go get a flu shot. Now, well, you didn't get a flu shot. Yeah, well, yeah, my dad got a flu shot and got the flu as a result of getting the flu shot. And I picked up some of it from my dad. So, see, these are contagious diseases. Viruses can be spread from person to person, and even through the air, breathing the same air in the same room. Ebola is the same thing. It's a virus. So even though you see these videos about, it's a big hoax, because this flu thing is, not flu, but this Ebola thing is becoming widespread because of giving people the Ebola shot, like a flu shot. So they get Ebola from it. Well, that may be true in some cases, but it does spread from person to person too, by either contact or even being close enough to breathe. You'll see in the video next we have, or if it wasn't in this one, I left the room for a moment during part of this, but they wanted people to stay back. Don't get too close if you're not dressed in these special suits that keep that virus from spreading through the air even on you. And God, who created the healing method of quarantine, when people have infectious diseases, they're quarantined for the benefit primarily of other people, so that other people won't pick that up, and then benefit of themselves too, because if other people pick it up, as you're recovering, you can re-get it by being around somebody else who has a new stage of it. So God designed quarantine for a good, healthy purpose. And that's another thing. Now we're in a situation. I got one more story out of Ebola, but I want to bring our chart up for just a moment, because we look at the prophecies in Revelation 6, and one of those prophecies, fourth one over on our chart here, where you see number 4, and a pale green colored horse at the top, and the little pale green bar in that column that says pale. Revelation 6 depicts the fourth seal as a pale horse with a rider whose name is Death. Alongside or just behind or following on the heels is Hades, hell, the grave. The grave. And Jesus Christ described the primary activity of this horse as loimus, meaning pestilence, disease epidemics, pandemic disease epidemics. And we've seen nothing yet, folks. I mean, what we've seen with thousands, with Ebola, this prophecy is going to escalate. We're going to see much, much, much more if people don't repent of disobeying our Creator. We look at several verses of Scripture. Read the entire chapters of Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy 28, the blessing and cursing chapters. In those chapters, I'll bring up a scripture in a moment after this next video. God says you obey, you get blessings. You disobey, you get cursing. And in the term of Revelation, it's going to come down to, it'll be cursings of more pandemic, disease epidemic. We'll be seeing millions affected, not just thousands and thousands, but millions. And I've got a special report I'll be giving in the next broadcast or two or three in the future that will give you some more insight on this. And plus, I'm going to bring in some comments from Mr. Herbert Armstrong, to whom God gave not only a lot of insight, but through whom God revealed these prophecies that we're watching. He revealed who was the sixth head of the Holy Roman Empire when it was revived for 9 short years between 1936 and 1945, until April 29, 1945, when they hung Mussolini and his mistress and his comrades upside down on the canopy of an Esso gasoline station in Italy. And I don't know if that's to the credit of Esso or I think I'll buy some of my gas from Esso for a while. They've had some problem with certain things, and yet perhaps that's a credit to them that Mussolini was hung upside down from their canopy, from an Esso gasoline station canopy in Italy. But that was 9 years of the revival of the Holy Roman Empire at the point of its sixth head, meaning Revelation 17 says there's 7 kings, 5 are fallen, 1 is. The 1 is was the one who was active between 1936 and 1945, Mussolini, who revived it as he conquered Ethiopia and said, hey, I have revived the Holy Roman Empire. That means the next part, the future present tense of Revelation 17 is 1 is yet to come. That 1 yet to come will revive for the last time. It'll be the 7th revision, the 7th and final head of the Holy Roman Empire. We don't know who that is yet. He'll be coronated. He'll be crowned in a coronation ceremony that's always conducted by the Pope in Frankfurt, Germany, in the Emperor's Hall, which the United States helped to rebuild after the Allied bombers blew up the Emperor's Hall toward the end of World War II. So that building has been rebuilt with brand new materials and built to the design of the original architectural plans for that Emperor's Hall building. It's all ready to go with new construction for the Pope to use in a coronation ceremony to crown that final head, that 7th head of the Holy Roman Empire. Now that's going to be a major event. That will trigger off what you see in this chart right after the 4th seal. You see the 5th seal. That will trigger off World War III. It'll trigger off a time we call here in biblical prophecy the Great Tribulation, the mega trouble. There's trouble that Christ announced would be part of the 4th seal. That would be between the 3rd seal and the 5th seal. That's the 4th seal. There'd be terrake, disturbances, trouble. But by comparison, the trouble that'll happen during the 4th seal and that's happening now as kind of like a prelude music to the next seal, the fifth seal, is just, that's it. It's a prologue. I mean, it's a prelude to the great trouble to come during the time of the seventh head of the Holy Roman Empire, which will kick off World War III. It'll kick off a tremendous martyrdom of God's saints, and it'll be the time of Jacob's trouble, as it's described in the Bible. And that's just ahead of us, just down the road. But for now, there's a lot of these seals happening. The second seal that Revelation depicts as a red horse, Jesus Christ described by the gospel writers Matthew, Mark, and Luke in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. He described the activities of this red horse as war, rumors of war, and world war. All right, I'm getting ahead of myself. I've got a story related to war coming up, but let's stay with this fourth seal for one more story related to disease epidemics. One village in Sierra Leone. Now, this is from last night's news. I pulled this video because this one is very special. Before we go to it, though, friends, I just pull up this one slide. That I have this in the next order. There was something in that last video, if you heard it while I was out of the room, I wanted to relate to no matter what people say, oh, we got these great treatment centers, and we're coming up with, ways to treat this disease. The real secret and the bottom line to overcoming disease epidemics is in this verse in Exodus 15, verse 26. One doctor, S.I. Macmillan, wrote a whole book that he titled from this scripture. He calls it None of These Diseases. This was a required text during our first-year Bible class at Ambassador College in Pasadena. And he got that title of his book, None of These Diseases, from this verse, Exodus 15, verse 26, where God said through Moses writing, if you will diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord your God, and will do that which is right in his sight, and will give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, God himself says, I will put none of these diseases upon you, which I've brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the Lord that healeth you. Now, there's a great promise. God announces himself as our Yahweh Rophika, the great God who healeth you. I'm the Lord that heals you. And he says, you won't even need healing. I won't even put these diseases on you if you will diligently hearken to the voice of the Eternal. You know where this Ebola outbreak has been prolific? In Africa, they eat bushmeat, and a lot of that bushmeat are wild animals that God says in Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14. I've put the scriptures up for you on the screen in the last few nights and last week. God says these are animals you should not be eating because I designed them to be the vacuum cleaners of the earth, to suck up viruses and stuff. And they keep them in their body and confined, but you eat them, or you kill them so you can eat them, or try to capture them and they bite you or scratch you, and that really will give you the virus. And then once you've got it, you spread it to other people that come into contact with you, they get it. And certainly eating something that's full of viruses, whether you get the virus or not, is not going to make you the most healthy person in the world. Yucko. But here, one more story we got related to this, friends. Let me get to it because we're running a long broadcast tonight. I wasn't even going to be on the air tonight. We're running a longer than usual one tonight. But stay with us. I hope you're benefiting from this program tonight. You should. There's a lot of good things. Christ told us to watch and pray always. And if you do that, he said, you'll be accounted worthy to escape the next major event to happen in prophecy. The next major event being the fifth seal, the Great Tribulation, a time that Jesus Christ said in Matthew 24, verses 21, 22, would be a time that's so bad, no time since the beginning of the creation, or since the beginning of the world, has been as bad as it's going to be, and no time after it will ever be as bad, thankfully. But if you can escape it, man, you want to give ear and do what Christ says in order that you can escape it. And he simply says, watch and pray always, that you may be accounted worthy to escape. And when you watch these things that relate to these first 4 seals that are active now, Christ says, and you pray about them with your heart, praying, thy kingdom come. God, help these people. Help us not be deceived by this first seal, this white horse of religious deception, with people coming as if they were ministers of Christ, saying Jesus is the Christ indeed, but not preaching the message that Christ preached, preaching instead deception, which Christ said, beware of those that bring, and don't be deceived, that bring this deception, and don't be deceived by them. And there be war, rumors of war increasing, famines and disease epidemics, and seismic problems of all kind, earthquakes and gale force winds, and trouble. And if you watch these things that we report on in the news every night and pray about them, friends, praying for the people involved, praying for God's kingdom to come, as news reports should tell us, God, we need your kingdom. Even with the Republicans in office in the United States, you're going to find out man's government is not going to work. In fact, if you just think about the logic of, you got a Democratic president that's got an agenda that's been like no other president before him has ever had. Some have had some things kind of similar. We've had Jimmy Carter. We've had others. We can name names because God's going to do that. He's going to lay it straight, calling a spade a spade. But one village. Let's get to this story. One village in Sierra Leone, from last night's news now, this village in Sierra Leone that's too remote to receive help from the authorities is dealing with Ebola by keeping the dying on one side of a main road and the living on the other side of that road. The village just outside the town of Port Loco is also struggling to cope with the number of orphaned children that need care. Bewildered and traumatized, many are often shunned by their own communities because they are terrified of catching the disease from them. Friends, as you watch this report with Andrew Harding, I hope that this one will help us pray tonight, tomorrow, this weekend. God, thy kingdom come. Help these people and help us to obey you, and help as many people who will to get on their knees and fast and pray and begin to obey you. Oh, great God. Here's this story, friends.
The following report contains some disturbing images.
An empty road, empty houses. We're driving into the new stronghold of the virus, unto one village at its heart. In Kigbal, a cluster of children on one side of the road. We soon discover why. On the other side, everyone is either dead or dying.
She said she's sick. She has the sickness of a turnover.
Her head is turning, so she's got a fever, presumably.
That's what she said.
Do you think it's Ebola?
It is.
We're having to be very careful where we walk. There were dead bodies all around here that were cleared up just recently, but still in the middle of this village we have Ebola victims, and there are two or three here, these women and their baby daughter, and another man just down the road, and they're all believed to have the virus. They're just being left here, presumably to die.
Next door, Momo Sese is struggling with no protective gear to care for his sick wife, Fatu.
The husband is asking the wife that if they don't heal you, what will happen to you? And the lady said she's going to die.
I'm sorry there's nothing we can do to help you, but I'm sure help will come.
Say,
He pleads again for help as Fatu drifts away. Across the road, the children wait. They think this side is safer. But some of them look feverish. So where are their parents?
Could you ask the children to raise their hands if they've been orphaned?
Friends, there you are. Look at all those orphaned children raising their hands in the screen there behind me. All right, we need to cut on out of that story. I've got two that relate to war and rumors of war that we mentioned we'd be going to tonight. There's a growing fear that the conflict in neighboring Syria will spill over into Lebanon, and that's left some communities taking up arms themselves. Friends, I gave you one scripture that related to specifically to obeying God and receiving none of these diseases. I've got a scripture slide here I'm going to pull up on the screen in full screen, from Leviticus 26. That's one of the two blessing and cursing chapters. And here in verse 8 of Leviticus 26, it talks about how to deal with your enemies, or how to handle how a country can handle its enemy situation. Right at the beginning of Leviticus 26, God says, if you diligently hearken to the voice of the Eternal, you obey His statutes, His commands, then you'll get these blessings. And one of the blessings here relates to your enemies. God says in verse 8, and 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 of you shall put 10,000 to flight. And your enemies shall fall before you by the sword. With God's help. Because that's part of this verse is under the section God is saying, these are the blessings I will give you as individuals and as a nation if you obey me. And then, of course, he says just the opposite if you don't obey him. But in this next story, Lebanon is expected to, men, instead of obeying God, they try to come up with their own military, and they try to fight things for themselves, and a lot of people wind up being killed, and you don't see 5 chasing away 100 or 100 putting 10,000 to flight. Lebanon is expected to sign a long-awaited $3 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia and France. Could save a lot of money if you just obey God. Let him fight your battles for you. Let him have 5 of you chase off 100, have 100 of you chase off 10,000. You got to believe God's word, though, and you got to do it. But this agreement that Saudi Arabia is making, that Lebanon is expected to sign with Saudi Arabia and France, an agreement which is designed to, quote-unquote, help the Lebanese army in its fight against Sunni militants. BBC's Karine Torby went to the Lebanese border in the border town of Ras Baalbek.
These are not soldiers in the Lebanese army. They are members of a vigilante group who have taken up arms to defend their community. Calls for the setup of local security groups have increased lately amid fears of renewed attacks by jihadi groups from Al-Nusra Front and the Islamic State across the porous border with Syria. These men have regular jobs during the day. In the evening, they rotate with others in a surveillance mission. They say they're helping to protect their village. Memories of the reign of militias still evoke strong passions in a country that witnessed 15 years of civil war. But for these men, they are on a mission to help the army secure the area.
If we see any suspicious movement in the mountains, we alert the army. We're not here to attack anyone. We just want to protect our village.
This village is Ras Baalbek, just across the long mountain range separating Lebanon from Syria. This man from the village tells me that behind these hills is where they expect to be attacked from. Syrian militants from Al-Nusra Front have been driven across the border and now stage attacks on the Lebanese army and the Shia group Hezbollah.
Okay, friends, we gave you the solution now. If you just obey God, you wouldn't need to spend all that money on arms. 5 of you could chase 100. 100 of you could put 10,000 to flight with God backing you up. I wanted you to see what's going on there. Friends, be aware of that. Something else to pray about. More trouble in the world that thankfully will be eradicated once Jesus Christ returns. All right, I'm going just a few minutes over an hour, friends. I want you to know where President Obama is planning to go next week, following this week after he, after the midterm elections put the Republicans in both houses. Reforms in Myanmar, also known as I'll tell you in a moment. My brain just went into a senile state, I guess you could say. Reforms in Myanmar have stalled. The pro-democracy activist Aung San Suu Kyi has warned. Speaking at a news conference in Yangon earlier today, the Nobel laureate, according to the news here, said Myanmar, which is also known as Burma, had not made any real reforms in the last 2 years. Her comments come ahead of a summit of world leaders, including U.S. President Barack Obama, next week. Neha Bhatnagar reports.
Golden times had started for Myanmar, also known as Burma. That's what many believed since direct military rule ended 3 years ago. A series of political and economic reforms were initiated, many sanctions were lifted. And after spending years under house arrest, the opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi was elected to parliament in 2012. But have these changes come to a grinding halt? On Wednesday, the country's most prominent pro-democracy activist and Nobel laureate openly expressed her frustration with the pace of change.
I don't think the reform process is going forward. I don't think we're going backwards yet, but certainly I think it has stalled for the time being.
Her frustration was not entirely unexpected. Despite relative openness, the military still dominates key decision-making. Mrs. Suu Kyi is barred from standing for president. Last week, these high-level talks took place with senior politicians and the head of the army, but Mrs. Suu Kyi said they had achieved little. She also warned world leaders against over-optimism about the country's transition from military to civilian rule.
I've often said that we help this process not by hoping and wishing for a happy ending, but by recognizing the situation for what it is really, and for deciding what needs to be done in order to promote genuine democratization in this country. So I hope that not just the United States, but all our well-wishers will be aware of this need to assess the situation hard-headedly and not be over-optimistic.
And she will be able to convey her thoughts to the US President Barack Obama directly next week when he arrives in Myanmar, along with other world leaders, to attend the most prestigious summit in the country's history. Neha Bhatnagar, BBC News.
Okay, friends, I wanted you to be aware of that. That's where President Obama will be going next week, along with many other along with many other world leaders. Friends, I went a little over an hour tonight on our program. That's it for this Wednesday night report. It's possible that I'm in negotiations that began some months ago for a program that could start within a few weeks, month or two, where I'll be doing a 1 hour every night, more secular type report on public radio, God willing, and we finished those negotiations out. Now, I would still try to keep our live video stream going, and I think the two would actually complement one another. It even sharpened me up a little bit more on World News having to do another program. I'm going to need an assistant, somebody to help me with that, though, so that's the thing I've been fasting and praying about. I'll appreciate your prayers about that, too. But better sign off. I've gone a little, I try to hold our maximum going overtime till an hour. I'm a few minutes over that tonight, so let me just zip out of here. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday evening. God willing, here on Nightcast. God willing, and the creek don't rise. We'll be back again Thursday night with the day's current news related to the Bible and prophecy here on Nightcast. Until next time, your host Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth saying so long and good night, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on COGTV.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the COGTV.org video archive.